Today I will be discussing SAT scores and how they can be used to predict an individual's IQ. So what exactly is IQ? IQ stands for intelligence quotient, and it is a measurement obtained from the normalization of scores from an IQ test. It is key to understand that the IQ scores outputted from an IQ test are not raw scores, but rather they are fitted into a perfect bell curve distribution. To be clear though, the unadjusted raw scores already tend to fit pretty closely to a bell curve distribution. The IQ tests are exams administered by a professional. They can vary in terms of the number of questions, the time constraint, and the types of questions. Today we have multiple IQ tests, one of the most notable ones being the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. This IQ test is highly regarded for its correlation with the G factor, also known as general intelligence. Something to keep in mind is that IQ is largely fixed after adulthood. It does not change much over time. The idea that you can improve your IQ through reading or any other cognitive exercise is unfounded. And yes, it is true that IQ is determined by both genetic and environmental factors. However, the majority of variance in IQ can be attributed to genetic variance, not environmental variance. In other words, genetics plays a significant role in determining general intelligence. I also must emphasize that IQ tests and scores are culture specific, and it is not accurate to compare IQ scores across different populations. Like we discussed in class, much of scientific research is done on weird, Western educated, industrial rich, and democratic populations. The same weird population principle applies to IQ testing as well. Well, that leads into the next question that may arise. What is so important about general intelligence? The reason why we care about general intelligence and the reason why IQ scores aren't just some arbitrary pointless number has to do with the significant life outcomes associated with the G factor. Educational achievement, job performance, and health outcomes have correlations as high as 0.8, 0.7, and zero point 0.4 with the G factor. So having information about the general intelligence of a population can grant you valuable insight into their future success. With the predictive power of IQ being so great, it makes sense why researchers want to know the IQ of populations. However, it takes time and money to administer IQ tests, and there may not be scores from IQ tests for certain populations readily accessible. As this is the case, researchers have developed systems for predicting IQ as a workaround for this problem. One example of such a system comes from a 1979 paper. In this system, someone monitors the behavior of a mother and their interactions with their infant child. Based on their interactions, researchers are able to predict the future IQ of the child. Another example of a system comes from a 2013 study that looks at the change of gray matter density as measured through MRI testing in adolescents to predict changes in IQ. Of course, both of these systems are incredibly time-intensive and costly, making them impractical as ways to predict IQ. Nonetheless, both systems achieve as high as 65% and 77% capture of the variance in IQ, respectively. This all leads into the predictive system for IQ that I'm here to discuss, and that prediction system is SAT scores. This system is both more accurate and much simpler than the two historical systems I described earlier, making it extremely practical. In their hallmark paper, Frey and Detterman were able to create a mathematical equation that predicts IQ from SAT scores with an error of only 5.94. They accomplished this by taking the data of students who had completed an Army IQ test called the ASVAB and the SAT. Then they used this data and performed a linear regression analysis. This linear regression achieved a p-value less than 0.05 and a correlation coefficient of 0.82. Some of the uncertainty of this prediction system could be from the fact that these tests, the IQ and the SAT, were taken on different days, and so the student may have had different levels of mental fatigue and or been in different emotional states. Checking the accuracy of predictions for the system is really simple. After someone inputs their SAT score and gets a predicted IQ output, they can simply go take an actual IQ test and see what their prediction was, which based on the findings of Frey and Detterman should be quite accurate. Unfortunately, the uncertainty of SATs as a predictive system for IQ is consistently miscommunicated to the public. The public widely believes that SAT scores are not at all correlated with IQ, which is absolutely untrue. In other words, the public believes that there is a ton of uncertainty with this predictive system when there really just isn't much at all. Because the public does not understand that the SAT is largely an IQ test, it leads to many incorrect conclusions that have negative consequences for our education landscape. This overestimation of the uncertainty of SAT scores as a predictor for IQ, and thus academic performance, played a significant role in colleges choosing to become test optional. Let me be clear, this was a bad decision. And now many colleges such as Harvard are going back on this decision by making SAT scores mandatory for applicants. Students with lower SAT scores and thus lower general intelligence have a much lower chance of completing a four-year degree and are overall much less successful. This matters, especially as the cost of tuition continues to rise. It does not make sense to have students take out loans only to end up not even completing their degree, or technically completing their degree, but in a weaker subject that will not lead to gainful employment. Thank you for your time.